The air in the living room felt heavy, like it was holding its breath, the night my mother handed me the tiny camera. "Put it in the living room, Sarah," she'd whispered, her voice sharp with suspicion, eyes glinting with a mix of fear and resolve. I was 30, married to Tom for 5 years, and I thought I knew every corner of his heart, until that moment. It started with small things. Tom's late nights at the office, his phone always face down, the way his laugh sounded forced when I asked about his day. My mother, ever the skeptic of men since Dad left her, noticed it too. "Men don't change their habits for no reason," she'd said over coffee one morning, her lips pursed. I brushed it off. Tom was my rock, my high school sweetheart, the man who'd held my hand through miscarriages and promised forever. But doubt is a seed, and once it's planted, it grows roots you can't ignore. The camera was small, no bigger than a button, and I hid it in the spine of a book on our living room shelf, angled to catch the couch where Tom spent his evenings. My hands shook as I set it up, guilt gnawing at me for spying on my own husband. What was I doing? This was crazy, wasn't it? But Mom's words echoed, "You need to know, Sarah, for your own sake." So I pressed record and waited. That first week, the footage showed nothing but mundane moments. Tom watching football, scrolling his phone, eating leftovers. I almost laughed at myself for doubting him. But then, on the 8th night, everything changed. I sat at my laptop, heart thudding, as the screen flickered to life with that evening's recording. There was Tom, sprawled on the couch, but he wasn't alone. A woman, petite, with auburn hair and a laugh that cut through me like glass, sat beside him, too close, her hand resting on his thigh. I froze, my breath caught in my chest. The room spun as I watched her lean in, her lips brushing his ear, whispering something that made him smile. A smile I hadn't seen in months. My Tom, my husband, turned to her, his hand cupping her face, and they kissed. Not a hesitant peck, but a deep, hungry kiss, the kind that belongs to lovers, not strangers. My stomach churned, bile rising in my throat. I slammed the laptop shut, tears burning my eyes, but the image was seared into my mind. I called my mother, sobbing, barely able to get the words out. "You were right," I choked. "He's cheating." She didn't say, "I told you so," but her silence was heavy with it. Instead, she said, "Come over tomorrow. We'll figure this out." I didn't sleep that night, replaying the footage in my head, each frame a dagger to my heart. Who was she? How long had this been going on? And how could Tom, the man who'd vowed to love me forever, betray me like this? The next morning, I sat in Mom's kitchen, clutching a mug of tea that had gone cold. She was calm, methodical, like a general planning a war. "We need to know who she is," she said, pulling out her phone. "And we need to be smart about this." I nodded numbly, still reeling. Mom suggested checking Tom's phone, but I couldn't bear the thought of touching it, knowing what secrets it held. Instead, we decided to keep the camera running to gather more evidence, to understand the depth of his deception. Days passed and the footage piled up. The woman, her name was Claire, I learned from a text Tom left open on his phone, came over 3 more times. Each visit was a fresh wound. They laughed, they touched, they acted like I didn't exist. I stopped eating, barely slept, my world shrinking to the glow of that laptop screen. But Mom was relentless. "You're stronger than this," she'd say, squeezing my hand. "We'll make him regret it." By the end of the week, I wasn't just broken, I was angry. The kind of anger that burns through despair and leaves clarity in its wake. I didn't just want answers. I wanted justice. Mom and I started digging, cross-referencing Claire's face with social media, piecing together her life. She was married, too, to a man named David, a quiet-looking guy who posted about his garden and his dog. The realization hit me like a slap. Tom wasn't just betraying me. Claire was betraying her husband, too. I found David's contact info on a neighborhood group page. My hands trembled as I typed out a message. "Hi, David. I'm Sarah, Tom's wife. I think we need to talk." I didn't know what to expect. Would he be angry, defensive, disbelieving? But when he replied, his words were simple. I had a feeling something was wrong. Can we meet? We agreed to meet at a coffee shop the next day. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, wondering what David would be like, whether he'd feel the same raw pain I did. Mom came with me, her presence a steady anchor as we walked into the cafe. David was already there, a man in his late 30s with kind eyes and a nervous smile. He stood when he saw us, extending a hand. Sarah? He asked, his voice soft but strained. We sat and I told him everything, the camera, the footage, Claire and Tom. His face paled as I spoke, his hands tightening around his coffee cup. I knew she was distant, he said finally, his voice breaking, but I didn't want to believe it. He showed me a photo of Claire on his phone, confirming it was the same woman. My heart ached for him, for us both, caught in this web of lies spun by the people we loved. Mom leaned forward, her voice firm. They don't get to do this and walk away unscathed. We need a plan. David nodded, his jaw set. I saw something shift in him, a flicker of the same anger I felt. We weren't just victims. We were survivors and we were done being played. As we talked, a plan began to form. Not just to confront Tom and Claire, but to make them feel the weight of what they'd done. The first step was to gather more evidence, to make sure they couldn't deny it. Mom suggested inviting David to our house to watch the footage together, to solidify our resolve. I hesitated. Letting a stranger into my home felt like exposing my wounds, but David's quiet strength convinced me. I need to see it, he said. I need to know for sure. That night, David came over. We sat in my living room, the same room where Tom and Claire had betrayed us, and I played the footage. David's face was stone as he watched, but his hands shook. When it was over, he looked at me, his eyes wet. What now? He asked. Mom smiled, a glint of steel in her eyes. Now, she said, we make them pay. The plan took shape in the quiet of my living room, with the hum of betrayal still lingering in the air. Mom, David, and I sat around the kitchen table, papers and laptops scattered like battle plans. We weren't just going to confront Tom and Claire. We were going to unravel their lies in a way they couldn't escape. The anger in me had hardened into something sharp and precise, and David's quiet resolve matched it. Mom, as always, was the spark, her mind racing with ideas, each one bolder than the last. We need to catch them in the act, she said, tapping her pen against a notepad. Not just on camera, but in front of us. They need to face what they've done. David nodded, his jaw tight. He'd been hurt, just like me, but there was a fire in him now, a need to reclaim his dignity. I felt it too, a hunger to take back the power they'd stolen from us. The first part of the plan was simple but risky. We'd stage a trap. I'd tell Tom I was going out of town for a work conference, leaving the house empty for a weekend. David would do the same with Claire, claiming a family emergency. We'd make sure they thought they had free rein to meet at our house, where the camera was still hidden, still recording. But we wouldn't just watch from afar. We'd be there, waiting when they thought they were alone. I called Tom that evening, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. I'm heading to Chicago for a conference, I lied, forcing a smile into my tone. I'll be gone Friday to Sunday. He sounded distracted, mumbling something about work, but I caught the faintest hint of relief in his voice. It made my skin crawl. David texted me later. Claire had bought his story too. No questions asked. The bait was set. Friday came, and I packed a bag to keep up the ruse, kissing Tom goodbye with a smile that felt like poison on my lips. I drove to Mom's house, where David was already waiting. We spent the day preparing, syncing the camera feed to my laptop so we could watch in real time. Mom insisted on adding a second camera in the hallway, just in case. You can never have too much evidence, she said, her eyes gleaming with purpose. As night fell, we sat in Mom's darkened living room, the laptop glowing between us. The feed showed our living room, empty at first, the couch mockingly pristine. Then, at 8:17 p.m., the front door opened. Tom walked in, his arm around Claire's waist, her laughter echoing through the speakers. My heart pounded, rage and hurt colliding in my chest. David's hand clenched into a fist, but he stayed silent, his eyes locked on the screen. They didn't waste time. Within minutes, they were on the couch, kissing, hands roaming with a familiarity that made me want to scream. I forced myself to watch, to let the pain fuel me. David's breathing was shallow, his face pale but resolute. Mom reached over, squeezing my hand. "We've got them," she whispered. "Now we wait for the right moment." The plan was to confront them mid-act, but not yet. We needed more, something undeniable, something that would leave them no room to lie. So we watched as they moved from the couch to the kitchen, pouring wine, laughing like they were the only two people in the world. Every giggle from Claire, every touch from Tom, was a fresh cut, but I held on to Mom's words. "You're stronger than this." At 9:30 we made our move. David and I drove back to my house, Mom following in her car. We parked a block away, creeping through the backyard like thieves in our own lives. The back door was unlocked. Tom's carelessness, or maybe his arrogance. We slipped inside, moving silently, the camera feed still open on my phone to guide us. They were back on the couch now, half-dressed, oblivious to the storm about to break. David and I stood in the hallway, hearts pounding, as Mom took her place by the front door, ready to block any escape. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and stepped into the living room. The light from the lamp caught Tom's face as he froze, his eyes wide with shock. Claire gasped, scrambling to cover herself, her face flushing red. "Sarah?" Tom stammered, his voice cracking. What are you doing here?" I held up my phone, the camera feed still playing, their betrayal looping in real time. "I could ask you the same thing," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. David stepped forward, his presence looming. "Claire," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Care to explain?" The room was a tableau of panic. Tom's mouth opened and closed, no words coming out. Claire clutched a throw blanket, tears welling in her eyes, but I felt no pity. "You thought you could do this?" I said, my voice rising. "In our home? With our lives?" I turned to David, nodding. He pulled out his phone, showing Claire the same footage, her own betrayal staring back at her. Mom stepped in, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You both thought you could play us for fools," she said, her eyes blazing. "But you're the ones who look foolish now." She gestured to the bookshelf, where the camera's tiny lens glinted faintly. Tom's face crumpled as he realized the depth of his exposure. Claire started sobbing, apologies spilling out, but they were hollow, desperate. Tom tried to reach for me, his hands shaking. "Sarah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean..." I cut him off, stepping back. "Don't," I said. "You don't get to touch me anymore." David turned to Claire, his voice cold. "We're done," he said simply. "I want you out of my house by morning." She nodded, still crying, but there was no fight in her. The weight of their actions had crushed them both. We didn't let them leave yet. Mom had one more piece of the plan. "You're going to sit here," she said, pointing to the couch, "and watch what you've done." We played the footage again, forcing them to see themselves, to feel the shame we'd carried for weeks. Tom stared at the floor. Claire buried her face in her hands, but we made them watch every second. As the night wore on, David and I exchanged a look. This wasn't over. Confronting them was only the beginning. We needed to protect ourselves, to make sure they couldn't twist the narrative. Mom suggested a lawyer, someone to handle the fallout. Divorce papers for me, separation for David. But more than that, we needed to reclaim our lives, to rebuild from the ashes of their betrayal. By dawn, Tom and Claire were gone, slinking out like shadows. The house felt empty, but not in a bad way, like it was finally mine again. David and I stood in the living room, the camera still watching, a silent witness to our pain and our strength. "What now?" he asked, echoing his words from before. "Now," I said, feeling a spark of hope. "We start over." The morning after the confrontation, the house was too quiet, like it was holding its breath after a scream. I stood in the living room, staring at the couch where Tom and Claire had unraveled our lives. The camera was still there, a tiny sentinel on the bookshelf, but I couldn't bring myself to touch it. Not yet. David had gone home to deal with Claire, promising to stay in touch. Mom was in the kitchen, making coffee, her presence a steady anchor in the chaos. "You did the right thing," she said, handing me a mug. Her eyes were soft but fierce, a reminder that I wasn't alone. But the weight of what came next, divorce, rebuilding, facing the world, felt crushing. I spent the day sorting through Tom's things, each item a reminder of the life we'd built. His favorite mug, the sweater I'd bought him last Christmas, the wedding photo on the mantle. I wanted to burn it all, but Mom stopped me. "Don't let anger make you reckless," she said. "You need to be smart now." She was right. I packed his belongings into boxes, methodical, like I was packing away the last 5 years of my life. David called that afternoon. "Claire's gone," he said, his voice hollow. "She took her things and left a note. Said she's staying with her sister." I could hear the pain in his words, the same ache I felt. We agreed to meet with a lawyer the next day, someone Mom recommended who specialized in divorce and separations. "We need to protect ourselves," David said, and I nodded, though he couldn't see me. Protect ourselves. It sounded so clinical, but it was survival. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Ellen, laid out our options. For me, divorce was the clear path. Tom's infidelity was undeniable, and the footage was ironclad evidence. For David, it was trickier. He wanted a separation first to give himself time to process. Ellen warned us both about the emotional and financial toll. "They'll try to spin this," she said. "Make sure you're ready for their lies." I thought of Tom's stammering excuses, Claire's fake tears, and felt my resolve harden. Mom suggested we do more than just divorce them. "They need to feel the consequences," she said, her voice low. She proposed going public, not with the footage, which was too personal, but with the truth. We could confront them in a way that exposed their character, not just their actions. David hesitated, but I was all in. I was tired of carrying their shame. We decided to start with our social circle. Tom and Claire had mutual friends, people we'd all known for years. I invited a few over for coffee, pretending it was a casual catch-up. David came too, his presence a quiet support. When they asked about Tom, I didn't hold back. "He cheated," I said simply, watching their faces shift from curiosity to shock. With Claire, David's wife. Gasps, wide eyes, awkward silences followed. David added his piece, his voice steady but raw, and by the end, our friends were rallying around us, promising to spread the word. The news spread like wildfire. By the next day, Tom's coworkers were giving him sidelong glances, and Claire's book club had quietly asked her to leave. I didn't feel joy exactly, but there was a grim satisfaction in knowing they couldn't hide. Mom called it justice. I called it reclaiming my life. But Tom didn't go quietly. He showed up at the house 2 days later, banging on the door, his face red with anger. "You're ruining my life," he shouted when I opened the door, keeping the chain lock in place. "You didn't have to tell everyone." I stared at him, the man I'd loved for so long, and felt nothing but disgust. "You ruined your own life," I said, closing the door in his face. Claire, meanwhile, tried a different tactic. She called David, crying, begging for forgiveness. He didn't give in, but I could tell it shook him. "She says she loves me," he told me over coffee, his eyes haunted. But how can I believe her? I didn't have an answer, but I knew one thing. We couldn't let them manipulate us again. Mom had another idea, hit them where it hurt. Tom was up for a promotion at work, a fact he'd bragged about months ago. Claire ran a small online boutique, dependent on her social media presence. We didn't need to sabotage them, that was too low. But we could make sure their actions followed them. David tipped off Tom's boss anonymously, sharing just enough to raise questions about his character. I left a review on Claire's boutique page, vague but damning. Hard to trust a business run by someone who betrays those closest to her. The fallout was swift. Tom's promotion fell through, and Claire's sales plummeted. They tried to fight back. Tom sent me angry texts, accusing me of being vindictive. Claire posted a tearful video online, claiming she was being unfairly targeted. But the truth was too heavy, and their lies couldn't hold up. Our community, small but tight-knit, turned its back on them. By the end of the week, I felt lighter, like I'd shed a weight I didn't know I was carrying. David and I met again, this time at a park, away from the suffocating walls of my house. We talked about the future, about healing, about what it meant to start over. "I don't know who I am without her," he admitted, kicking at a pebble. I nodded, understanding. "I don't know who I am without him either," I said. "But I want to find out." Mom joined us, bringing sandwiches and her unyielding optimism. "You're both stronger than you think," she said, her eyes warm. "You've already survived the worst." For the first time in weeks, I believed her. The pain was still there, sharp and raw, but it wasn't all I was. I was Sarah, daughter, friend, survivor, and I was ready to rebuild. As we sat there, the sun dipping low, I realized something else. This wasn't just about Tom and Claire's betrayal. It was about me, about David, about choosing to fight for ourselves. The camera had exposed their lies, but it had also shown me my own strength. And that, I knew, was something they could never take away. The weeks that followed were a blur of paperwork and pain. Divorce proceedings began, and each meeting with Ellen, the lawyer, felt like peeling back another layer of my life with Tom. The camera footage was our trump card, ensuring he couldn't contest the terms. I asked for the house, my sanctuary despite the memories, and half our savings. Tom fought at first, claiming I was being unfair, but Ellen shut him down with a single sentence. "We have evidence, Tom. You don't." David's journey was different but no less grueling. He opted for a legal separation, still unsure about divorce. Claire had moved out, but she kept calling, leaving voicemails that swung between apologies and accusations. David listened to them in silence, his face a mask of conflict. "I want to hate her," he told me one evening over takeout at my place. "But part of me still loves her." I understood too well, the heart doesn't let go as easily as the mind. Mom became our rock, showing up with meals, advice, and an uncanny ability to make us laugh when we thought we couldn't. She'd sit with us, recounting stories of her own divorce, how she'd rebuilt after Dad left. "You don't get over it," she'd say, "but you get through it." Her strength was contagious, and I clung to it like a lifeline. The social fallout continued. Tom and Claire were pariahs now, their names whispered in grocery stores and coffee shops. I didn't revel in it, but I didn't stop it either. They'd made their choices, and choices have consequences. Tom moved into a cramped apartment across town, his charm fading under the weight of his actions. Claire's boutique was barely surviving, her online presence tainted by the truth we'd let slip. But the victory felt hollow sometimes. Late at night, when the house was quiet, I'd sit on the couch, the same couch, and wonder where I'd gone wrong. Had I missed signs? Had I been too trusting? Mom caught me one night, staring into space, and sat beside me. "You didn't do this," she said firmly. "He did." I nodded, but the doubt lingered, a shadow I couldn't shake. David and I started meeting regularly, not just to strategize but to heal. We'd walk in the park, talk about anything but Tom and Claire, movies, books, the future. He was kind, thoughtful, with a quiet humor that surprised me. I found myself looking forward to our talks, a small spark of light in the darkness. Mom noticed, raising an eyebrow but saying nothing. I wasn't ready for anything new. Not yet, but David's presence was a comfort, a reminder that I wasn't alone. One afternoon, Ellen called with news. Tom wanted to settle. He'd agreed to my terms, no contest. I should have felt triumphant, but instead, I felt empty. It's not about winning, Ellen said, reading my silence. It's about closing this chapter. She was right. I signed the papers, my hands steady, and felt a weight lift. Not all at once, but enough to breathe a little easier. David's situation was messy. Claire was fighting the separation, claiming she wanted to work things out. He showed me one of her letters, full of promises to change. "Do you believe her?" I asked. He shook his head. "I want to, but I can't." We sat in silence, the weight of our shared betrayal hanging between us. But there was strength in that silence, too, a bond forged in pain. Mom suggested we do something symbolic to mark the end of this phase. A ritual, she called it. We decided to take down the camera, the device that had both shattered and saved us. David came over, and together we removed it from the bookshelf. It felt like dismantling a bomb, careful and deliberate. We didn't destroy it. Mom insisted we keep it as evidence, but we buried it in a box in the attic, out of sight. Afterward, we sat in the living room, the three of us, drinking wine and talking about anything but the past. David told a story about his dog, a goofy retriever who'd eaten an entire pizza, and I laughed until my sides hurt. Mom watched us, a knowing smile on her face. "You're going to be okay," she said, and for the first time I believed it. But life doesn't tie up neatly. A week later, Tom called, his voice small. "Can we talk?" he asked. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a diner. He looked older, worn, his charm replaced by something broken. "I messed up," he said, eyes downcast. "I know I can't fix it, but I'm sorry." I waited for the words to mean something, but they didn't. "I hope you find peace," I said, standing to leave. "But it won't be with me." Driving home, I felt lighter, like I'd finally let go of the last piece of him. I called David, needing to share the moment. "You did good," he said, his voice warm. "You're free now." Free. The word felt foreign, but I wanted to believe it. Mom was waiting when I got home, a bottle of wine and 2 glasses on the table. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. I clinked mine against hers, the sound sharp and clear. The pain was still there, but it was quieter now, drowned out by the promise of something new. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in months, I was ready to find out. Freedom, it turns out, is a fragile thing. It came in moments. Laughing with David over coffee, planting flowers with Mom in her garden, signing the final divorce papers, but it was shadowed by memories that crept in uninvited. The living room, once a place of betrayal, was slowly becoming mine again. I rearranged the furniture, painted the walls a soft blue, but the ghosts of Tom and Claire lingered in the corners. David was navigating his own path. Claire had stopped fighting the separation, moving to her sisters permanently. He sold their house, unable to live with the memories, and rented a small apartment near the park where we'd taken to walking. Our friendship deepened, built on shared wounds but growing into something lighter. We talked about dreams we'd forgotten, travel, new hobbies, the idea of starting over. "I want to see the ocean," he said one day, his eyes distant. "I've never been." I smiled, promising we'd go together someday. Mom was relentless in her optimism, pushing me to reclaim my life. She signed me up for a pottery class, claiming it would ground me. I went, rolling my eyes, but found solace in the clay, the way it yielded under my hands. It was a small thing, but it felt like creating something new, something that was just mine. Mom joined me sometimes, her laughter filling the studio as she shaped lopsided bowls. "We're rebuilding," she'd say, and I started to believe her. The community's judgment on Tom and Claire didn't let up. Tom had quit his job, unable to handle the whispers, and moved to another city. Claire's boutique closed, her social media accounts gone silent. I didn't follow their lives closely, but word got around. Part of me pitied them, but the larger part, the part that had watched that footage over and over, felt they'd earned their exile. One evening, David called, his voice tense. "Claire sent me something," he said. "A letter. She wants to meet." My stomach twisted, remembering Tom's diner apology. "Are you going to?" I asked. He sighed. "I don't know. I need to close this chapter, but I'm scared it'll open old wounds." I understood too well. We decided to meet at my place to read the letter together, with Mom there for moral support. The letter was long, written in Claire's looping handwriting. She admitted her mistakes, claimed she'd been lost, searching for something she couldn't name. She begged for a chance to explain, not to reconcile but to find peace. David read it in silence, his face unreadable. "What do you think?" I asked. He shook his head. "It's too late," he said. "I don't owe her my forgiveness." Mom nodded, her eyes fierce. "You don't owe them anything," she said. "Not after what they did." But I saw the conflict in David's eyes, the same conflict I'd felt with Tom. Forgiveness wasn't about them. It was about us, about letting go of the weight we carried. I didn't say it out loud, but I wondered if I'd ever be ready to forgive Tom. Not for his sake, but for mine. We burned Claire's letter in Mom's backyard, a small act of defiance. The flames curled around the paper, turning her words to ash. David watched, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "I'm done," he said, and I knew he meant it. I squeezed his hand, feeling a kinship that went beyond our shared pain. We were survivors rebuilding together. Life started to feel normal again, or at least a new kind of normal. I went back to work, took up running, started smiling without forcing it. David and I planned that ocean trip, booking a weekend in a coastal town. Mom insisted on coming, claiming she needed a break too. The three of us laughed more than we had in months, planning hikes and seafood dinners. It wasn't just a trip, it was a promise to ourselves. But the past wasn't done with us. One morning, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a note from Tom, short and scrawled. "I'm trying to be better. I hope you're happy." I stared at it, waiting for the old pain to surge, but it didn't. I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just a quiet indifference. I showed it to Mom, who snorted. "Too little, too late," she said, tossing it in the trash. I didn't argue. David, meanwhile, was finding his own peace. He started volunteering at an animal shelter, his love for his dog spilling over into helping others. He sent me photos of puppies, his grin brighter than I'd ever seen. "You should come by," he texted. "They'd love you." I did, and watching him play with a litter of mutts, I saw a man who was healing, just like me. The ocean trip was a turning point. Standing on the beach, the waves crashing at our feet, I felt small but strong. David stood beside me, Mom a few steps behind, her hair whipping in the wind. "We made it," I said, more to myself than anyone. David nodded, his eyes on the horizon. We did. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, I realized something. The camera had exposed more than Tom's betrayal. It had shown me my own resilience, the unbreakable bond with my mother, the unexpected friendship with David. The pain had nearly destroyed me, but it had also rebuilt me, stronger than before. The ocean trip marked a shift, like the tide pulling us toward something new. Back home, I threw myself into small acts of reinvention. New curtains for the living room, a cooking class with Mom, runs with David through the park. Each step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, stitching together the woman I'd been before Tom's betrayal and the one I was becoming. David was changing too. The shelter became his sanctuary. The dogs a reminder that love could be simple, uncomplicated. He'd text me updates. A puppy adopted, a new litter arriving, his enthusiasm infectious. Our walks turned into dinners, then movie nights, always with an unspoken boundary. We were friends, bound by shared scars, but there was a warmth there, a possibility I wasn't ready to name. Mom saw it, of course. "He's good for you," she said one evening, chopping vegetables for dinner. I rolled my eyes, but she pressed on. You don't have to decide anything now, Sarah. Just don't close the door. I didn't answer, but her words lingered. David was steady, kind, the opposite of Tom's flash and charm. But the thought of trusting again felt like stepping onto thin ice. Work became a refuge, too. I threw myself into projects, earning praise from my boss for my focus. It felt good to be competent, to be seen for something other than my pain. I started mentoring a younger colleague, sharing the confidence Mom had instilled in me. You're a natural, she told me, and I smiled, feeling the truth of it. The past still crept in, though. A mutual friend mentioned Tom in passing. He was working a low-level job in a new city, living alone. I waited for the pang of guilt or sadness, but it didn't come. He was a stranger now, his choices no longer my burden. Claire, I heard, had moved across the country, her boutique a distant memory. Their absence left a quiet space, one I was learning to fill. David and I decided to host a small gathering, a way to reclaim the living room for good. We invited friends who'd stood by us, Mom included, and filled the house with laughter, music, and good food. The couch was just a couch again, not a symbol of betrayal. As I watched David joke with a friend, his eyes crinkling with genuine joy, I felt a flutter in my chest. Maybe Mom was right. Maybe the door wasn't closed. The night ended with us cleaning up together, dishes clinking in the sink. This was good, David said, drying a plate. Feels like a new start. I nodded, the words resonating. We were starting over, not just as individuals but as a unit. Friends, allies, maybe something more someday. Mom, ever the planner, suggested we write letters to ourselves, a time capsule for the future. Write who you are now, she said, and who you want to be. I sat at my desk, pen in hand, and poured out my heart. I wrote about the pain, the strength, the hope. I wrote about David's laughter, Mom's fierce love, the woman I was becoming. David did the same, sealing his letter with a shy smile. We'll open these in a year, he said. See how far we've come. Life settled into a rhythm. I ran, I worked, I laughed. David and I planned another trip, this time to the mountains, just the two of us. Mom teased us mercilessly, but her eyes were warm. You're finding your way, she said, and I knew she meant both of us. One evening, as we hiked a trail near my house, David stopped, his breath visible in the cool air. I'm glad we met, he said, his voice soft. Not because of what happened, but because of who you are. My heart raced, but I didn't look away. Me too, I said, and meant it. We didn't kiss, didn't cross that line, but the moment felt like a promise. The camera, still in its box in the attic, was a relic now, a reminder of the truth that set me free. I didn't need it anymore, but I kept it, a symbol of the strength I'd found. Mom was right. It had nearly destroyed me, but it had also saved me. I was Sarah, not defined by Tom's betrayal but by my own resilience, by the people who stood by me, by the future I was building. As winter approached, I felt a quiet peace. The living room was warm again, filled with new memories. David's laughter, Mom's stories, my own growing confidence. The pain was still there, a scar that would never fully fade, but it didn't define me. I was more than my hurt, more than my past. I was ready for whatever came next, and for the first time in a long time I wasn't afraid. Winter brought a crisp clarity to my life, like the world had been washed clean. The divorce was finalized, the house officially mine, and the living room no longer felt like a crime scene. I hung new art on the walls, bright abstracts that made me smile. David's apartment became a second home, where we'd cook terrible meals and laugh at our failures. Mom declared herself our official taste tester, showing up with wine and unsolicited advice. Our mountain trip was a revelation. We hiked snow-dusted trails, our breath puffing in the cold air, and talked about everything: dreams, fears, the people we wanted to be. David admitted he was scared to love again, but hopeful. You make it seem possible, he said, his eyes meeting mine. I felt the same, a cautious optimism blooming where despair had once lived. We didn't rush, didn't label what we had, but every moment with him felt like a step forward. Mom watched us with a knowing smile, her role as matchmaker unspoken but obvious. She'd invite David over for dinner, claiming it was just family, then conveniently leave us alone to talk. "You're healing each other," she said one night, squeezing my hand. I didn't argue. David was more than a friend now, though neither of us was ready to say it out loud. The past still reached out sometimes. A friend forwarded me a post from Tom's new social media account, a vague apology about mistakes and growth. I deleted it without reading the comments. Claire surfaced too, sending David an email about closure. He didn't respond, and we burned that one too, the flames, a ritual of letting go. They were ghosts now, fading with every step we took forward. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since college. Short stories, journal entries, fragments of the woman I was becoming. Mom read them, her eyes shining with pride. "You've got a voice," she said. "Use it." I did, submitting a piece to a local magazine. When it was accepted, David threw an impromptu party, complete with cheap champagne and Mom's famous lasagna. "To Sarah," he toasted, his grin wide. "To surviving. Surviving. That's what we'd done, David and I. We'd taken the wreckage of our lives and built something new. Not perfect, but real." The camera, still tucked away, was a footnote now, a tool that had exposed the truth and set us free. I thought about destroying it, but decided to keep it, a reminder of my strength. One evening, as snow fell outside, David and I sat in my living room, a fire crackling in the hearth. We opened the letters we'd written months ago, the time capsule Mom had suggested. Mine spoke of pain, but also hope, a woman determined to rise. David's was similar, his words raw but resolute. "We were right," he said, folding his letter. "We're stronger than we thought." I looked at him, his face soft in the firelight, and felt a rush of certainty. "David," I said, my voice steady, "I'm ready." He knew what I meant without asking. He leaned in, his lips brushing mine, a kiss that was gentle but sure. It wasn't a promise of forever, but it was a beginning, one I chose with open eyes. Mom called the next day, sensing the shift without being told. "About time," she teased, but her voice was warm. She invited us over for Christmas, insisting we start new traditions. We did, filling her house with laughter, music, and the kind of joy that comes from surviving the worst and finding something better. The year ended with a quiet moment, just David and me on my porch, watching the snow. "We made it," I said, echoing our ocean trip. He squeezed my hand, his warmth grounding me. "We did," he said, "and we're just getting started." The camera had nearly destroyed me, but it had also shown me who I was. I was Sarah, daughter, friend, writer, survivor. I was enough. And as I stood there, David beside me, the future felt like a gift, unwrapped and waiting. The pain was a scar, but the life I was building was a masterpiece, one I'd paint with every choice, every day, every step forward.